doctor met with us, and he confirmed that it was lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is the better to have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma than it is to have Hodgkin's lymphoma. And he said he didn't feel that it would need to be treated at that time. He said, I would think that you have about 10 years to live. And he said the lymphoma won't kill you. What you will die from is an infection. That's because of the lymphoma, you won't be able to fight off the infection, and that's what will take your life.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to the 8 Decades podcast. I'm your host, Josiah Freeland, and in this mini podcast series, I'm sitting with my grandpa, Steve Freeland, to explore the past 80 years of American history, looking at it from his perspective and sharing a few of his personal stories. In this 7th and final episode, we're going to be diving into the years 2010 to 2023. You're going to hear stories about my grandma's fight against cancer, the Boston Marathon bombings, and ISIS with their rise to power. And those are just a few of the things that you're going to be hearing about in this episode. Starting off in 2010, the Burj Khalifa skyscraper opened, and it was and still is the tallest building in the world, 163 floors.
It's a long ways up.
It is.
Or down. I don't know anything about any of those things that you've just mentioned. I was probably aware the day that it happened, but doesn't really mean anything to me other than the wonderment that they're able to do those things, build something that high or blast off to the moon. Amazing stuff. You become aware of it, and how are they able to do that?
Right.
I'm not smart enough to understand it, the why or the ability to do those things.
In 2011, the nuclear power plant in Fukushima, Japan, shut down automatically after a massive 9.0 magnitude earthquake. This is what it was designed to do. However, the tsunami that followed flooded the plant, causing core meltdowns and released radioactive material into the environment.
That, of course, I was aware, not able to do anything about it or other than feel badly for the millions of people that would affect, and hope that the world learns a lesson on building atomic power plants and where and how to do those kinds of things safely. Recognize the huge cost to Japan in all of that happening.
My grandpa shared the story of walking alongside his wife through her battle against cancer.
Well, it started when Connie, in maybe 2001, she had a lump on her neck, and she made arrangements to. She thought it was just a cyst, but it was bothersome to her, and so she made arrangements to have it surgically removed. The doctor that did the surgery was just an outpatient surgery. He called me and said that without telling me anything, he said that she needed to have it. She needed to see an oncologist and have it biopsied. And when we met with an oncologist 2 weeks later, something like that, and we'd already assumed that it was lymphoma cancer. And the doctor met with us, and he confirmed that it was lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is the better to have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma than it is to have Hodgkin's lymphoma. And he said he didn't feel that it would need to be treated at that time. He said, I would think that you have about 10 years to live. And he said the lymphoma won't kill you. What you will die from is an infection. That's because of the lymphoma, you won't be able to fight off the infection, and that's what will take your life. And we wanted a second opinion, so we went to Stanford, and they took a different view. They said that they would start treating her. We thought she might qualify for a particular research program at Stanford at the time, but she didn't qualify for that, and I don't know why. But anyway, after getting the second opinion, we decided to stay with the doctor here in Fresno. And when she died, it was almost 10 years to the day from when Dr. Moffat had said that he expected her to live, roughly 10 years, and that the medications that she was taking when she died weren't even available when she got sick 10 years earlier. That the medicine for the treatment of her kind of lymphoma had progressed in that 10 years. That the ultimately the lymphoma was compounded by leukemia, and she was not doing well. She had been in the hospital, I want to say 3 or 4 times in that 10 years for different infections or different conditions. And the Thanksgiving of 2010, she was in the hospital, and she was there for maybe 5 or 6 days. But every time she got sick and went to the hospital, she got better. It was almost routine. We begin to take it for granted that, okay, she went to the hospital yesterday, she'll be out of hospital in a few days. She'll get better. And that happened at Thanksgiving that year, 2010. She came home, but mid-December, she started getting worse, and she had an infection that they didn't know how to, they couldn't treat it. They couldn't get it to fight it. So on the 23rd of December, when she went to see the doctor, and she had been taking chemotherapy on occasion the previous 2 years. And so the doctor saw her on the 23rd of December, 22nd December, somewhere in there, and said, "You need to go to the hospital." He walked in and just looked at her and said, "You don't look good." He says, "You need to go to the hospital." And the idea was that in the hospital setting, she'd have constant care, and the doctor for this infection was available at the hospital, where she wouldn't be available outside of the hospital. So we admitted her on the 23rd of December. I went to see her at lunchtime on the 24th, and your Uncle Mark was there because he only worked 3 or 4 blocks away from the hospital. So he was there when I got there and spent an hour with her. And when I left, she was walking around. She was on oxygen, but she was walking around and somewhat better, we thought. Mark was still there when I left, and I went to church. That was Christmas Eve. I went to church that night, went to the hospital at about 7:30 that night, Christmas Eve, and I don't know all the details, but apparently she had collapsed, lack of oxygen, transferred her to ICU, intensive care. She was on oxygen. She was in a coma, and she remained in the coma for another roughly 10 days and was on oxygen the whole time, of course. And she was septic. The infection was throughout her body, and that infection technically is what took her life. And I asked the doctor the morning made arrangements on the 3rd of January of 2011 to meet with me and to get his analysis as to whether she would ever be able to come out of if she could ever start breathing on her own. And he, in essence, blamed her doctor for not coming to the hospital to take care of her, to treat her. It wasn't Dr. Moffat's problem. The doctor at the hospital, he just wanted to deflect his own guilt, I guess, for not being able to do anything for her. So made the decision to disconnect all the life supports the next morning, January 4th. And so I made the decision to have all the life support disconnected. And while we were in a waiting room for them to clean her up and disconnect everything, the lady at the desk called and said that she had died. She had passed, and buried her 4 or 5 days later. Sad day.
I followed up by asking how many years they were married.
47. The goal was, because of her health, we had set a goal of 50 years, but she didn't make it.
In 2012, Sandy Hook Elementary School in Connecticut experienced the second deadliest mass shooting committed by a single gunman in U.S. history.
Obviously, the Sandy Hook massacre was widely known and affected a lot of people. The years later, and I don't remember the man's wife's name, the man that shot all those people, all those kids. The wife of that man was a Christian, and she spoke at a dinner here in Fresno years later. I want to say 2016, something like that. And she wrote a book. I've got the book about that experience. I've got it here somewhere. And so I was able to hear her speak about that experience and the effect that both that her faith had on her experience, but also the experience had on her faith. And not being able to adequately answer the main question was, why did her husband do that? And she knew some of the parents of the children that were killed, what caused her husband to do that, and not being able to adequately answer the why and how to live with the fact that her husband had done what he did. Anyway, that's the only connection, of course, that I had to all of that. But it's not something that anyone would not remember.
I followed by asking if he sees any difference in the frequency of shootings from when he was in high school to modern day.
We never heard about it. The first mass killing that I can remember probably was, and there were some that happened before, but that I remember probably about 1963 or 64, 65, wow, somewhere in there. And I've forgotten his name, but some crazy guy had killed, I think there were 6 or 8 nurses in Chicago. They were all living together, and one of the nurses that was killed was the daughter of a U.S. senator from Illinois. That's the first mass that I can remember.
On December 21st of 2012, the Mayan calendar ended. Some people believe that this would be the day the world ended.
Every few years, there's somebody that comes along and says, well, the world is going to end. Life is going to end at midnight tomorrow or the third day of next year or whatever. And because of my faith, I don't put any stock in any of that. The scriptures tell us that no one knows when all this is going to end. And even if we did know, there's nothing that could be done about it. So I don't put any stock at all in any of that kind of thinking or belief.
The following year, the Boston Marathon bombings took place.
Oh, I remember it. I over the years have run in a lot of races with several people that were there in Boston that day. None of the ones that I know were hurt, but a pretty cowardly thing for those 2 young men to do and injure and take the life of people that it made no sense. Yeah. They didn't have an axe to grind with those people that were hurt or that they tried to hurt. But it emphasizes the hatred that some people have for people they don't even know, and that's the unexplainable description of hatred. I don't like your faith. I don't like the way you look. I don't like the way you live. Even though I don't know you, I'm going to be violent and try to take your life. It just makes no sense. But when you're dealing with people that bigoted, that's what you get is a lack of compassion and a lack of love, lack of tolerance.
Edward Snowden leaked classified documents in 2013. He revealed that the NSA was collecting vast amounts of data on U.S. citizens: emails, texts, phone calls, video calls, internet activity.
Yeah, I didn't understand it at the time. I mean, I saw that it was happening, but in many respects, it didn't affect me. It didn't concern me, and I didn't understand what it was all about. Probably have a better understanding today an appreciation of what was going on. But I don't. I have mixed feelings about today. I have mixed feelings about it all. I don't appreciate the fact that somebody is collecting information about me that may or may not be used against me in the future, or that they benefit from that information about me, even if it's not at my expense. But at the same time, I don't know what the big deal is about collecting the information, but I also don't appreciate people, the government, knowing more about me than they need to know, or collecting information about me. But at the same time, I don't have anything to hide. So why should I be concerned about them invading my privacy or collecting data on me that may or may not be to my benefit down the road? But at the same time, I'm conflicted as to why the government feels that it needs to do that. And at the same time, why is it necessary to have all this data that is being collected made secret? Mm-hmm. We're allowing the government to say what should be kept secret. It's an overreaction to the government having the authority to say, oh, these are secret papers. This is data. This data is secret. It shouldn't be shared. Well, on the one hand, I'm offended that they will collect this information, but at the same time, they're saying this data that we've collected on Steve Freeland is secret. What gives the government? The closest thing to working for the government, or that the government has in my life, is I was a banker, and I had to follow certain rules and laws and regulations because of the banking industry. Well, I don't establish any concern to the government of the United States with what I do or my life. Okay, you collect all this information. What makes me so special that data that you've collected is to remain secret? Mm-hmm. If I had my druthers, you wouldn't be allowed to collect the information to begin with. I'm not breaking any laws. If I'm breaking a law, okay. But to say this data that we've collected on these people has to be kept secret. Mm-hmm. And if you share that information with somebody else, you've broken a law. To me, it doesn't make sense. To me, it's hypocritical that the government can say, we're entitled to collect this data, these people, mm-hmm. even though there's no indication that the data that suggests any malfeasance or an attempt to avoid paying taxes or whatever it might be. But they say, we're entitled to collect this information, and we're going to declare that information private to the government, and you can't share that information with anybody or anything. We can collect information privately, but it's against the law for you to share what we've collected with somebody else. I'm conflicted on Snowden. Okay, he may have broken some laws, but he has disclosed a process in the process of all that. He has disclosed to those whose privacy has been invaded, that your privacy is being invaded without your consent. For me personally, it creates a lack of trust in the government.
In 2014, the Malaysia Airlines flight 370 disappeared. It was traveling from Malaysia to China and was carrying 239 people.
Just disappears.
Yeah.
I remember there was a lot of speculation about it. Speculation ran all the way from the pilot caused it to ditch in the ocean. The plane flew at such a low altitude over the ocean that they couldn't determine its course, mm-hmm. that the plane was on autopilot and that they just ran out of fuel, that somehow the course got changed from going to Beijing. It went towards Australia. There was even speculation that the Chinese had somehow confiscated the plane that it flew into China for nefarious reasons, and the Chinese didn't want to acknowledge the fact that they had basically stolen the plane out of midair.
Yeah.
They were, and I remember them. I mean, they spent months trying to locate. But the Pacific and Indian Ocean is a big area.
Just a few weeks following this flight disappearing, the 2014 West Africa Ebola outbreak began. The World Health Organization reported a rapidly evolving virus, making it the largest and deadliest Ebola outbreak in history.
Yeah, the frightening details of that virtually everyone that got sick died, and that it didn't take, I don't remember the details, but it didn't take a whole lot for somebody to get sick, to get Ebola. And I remember that there was a doctor from Nebraska, or he was sent to the hospital in Nebraska. He either had caught the Ebola or had gone to Ethiopia, was it, to care for Ebola patients. There was some connection with one or two people in Nebraska. I've forgotten the details, but they were setting up emergency Ebola clinics and basically tent hospitals for this outbreak. And it went on for several months, if I remember right. But very, very deadly.
2011 and years following, the Islamic State, or ISIS, started to rise with a lot of power. In late 2015, President Obama told an interviewer that we have them contained, referring to ISIS. The next day, 4 terrorist strikes took place in Paris. In the next year, there were 4 other strikes tied to this. I asked my grandpa if he remembered any of these stories about ISIS.
Vaguely. Just that ISIS was just another organization out of the Middle East that hated Americans and hated anything that wasn't Islamic, and that they're brutal people, brutal organization. I probably didn't give it a whole lot of thought any more than I do today, other than what I just said, that they're brutal.
Donald Trump won the U.S. presidency election in 2016.
I regret that I voted for Donald Trump twice, but neither time would I have voted for his opponent. So Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden would not have gotten my vote. But would I vote for Trump again? No. Some of his policies were good, but the way he governed, his character, his trustworthiness, no, it was a mistake.
This was the same year that my grandpa retired.
It was a mistake. I didn't need to retire. I wasn't forced to retire. I was still healthy enough to continue to work. I liked what I was doing, but I retired primarily to try to save my marriage.
He's referring to his second marriage, which he didn't really have anything to say about when I brought it up earlier.
And it just didn't work out. And if I had continued to work, I probably would be working today.
I asked why he couldn't go back.
They were happy that I would, at the bank, they were happy that I was retiring. It was a way of them saving some money. I had gotten delinquencies, collections to the point where they didn't need me anymore. In 2000, when I retired, there was only, I had I had a staff of 2+ people working for me. When I retired, there was only one person, and she was 2 years away from retiring. The pandemic started, and it affected a lot of businesses. I had gotten word that the bank might be looking for somebody to help them out with collections, and I let it be known that I was willing to come back and work for less money, but I never heard back. And I had also, in 2017, let one of the other banks in town know that I would be interested in working for them, but I never heard back from them either. And in that case, I I have no idea why they didn't contact me. But I regret retiring. I liked my job. I did a good job. I did a better job than anybody in the area could or would do. I didn't need the money. It would have been nice to add that income. And if I'd have continued to work, they probably a year later, or a year and a half later, because I retired in the middle of the year, they probably would have just eliminated my position anyway. They didn't need me. I dealt with all the problems, and the bank had got to the point where we didn't have that many problems.
In 2017, NFL players started kneeling during the national anthem in a silent protest of racial bias and violence.
I was certainly aware of it. I have mixed feelings about it all. Does attention need to be drawn to the racial imbiases? Yes. We need to do what we can to correct that injustice. I have a difficult time with not recognizing tradition creating disrespect for other things or other people. In this case, the disrespect for the national anthem. You shoot yourself in the foot by disrespecting something and say that you're doing the disrespect to draw attention to this situation where respect is not provided. The silent protests, they weren't so silent, protesting unjust laws, such as sitting lunch counter in the 1960s, Georgia, Alabama, in the South, making a protest against not serving blacks for white-only situations. In a lot of cases, there was a law that says you can't serve a black person at this lunch counter.
Yeah.
It's an unjust law. There's a way to get that changed. They did it it was done through, in part, nonviolent sit-ins, bringing it to attention to the people that this is unjust, this process, this law, this regulation, it's unjust. That's one thing, but to disrespect the national anthem by not saluting the flag, not joining in the celebration, however you want to define that, shows disrespect for something that is not against the law. Maybe this is not a good example, but it's disrespectful to go into a church and wear your hat. Women would wear their hat, and that's not disrespectful. Mm-hmm. You don't have to salute the flag if you don't want to join in that celebration or that activity because you feel that you want to draw attention to a particular belief. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. Tommy Smith and can't think of his name now. The two black American athletes in 1964 in Mexico City Olympics, after winning the first, third places in the 100 meters, they stood on the podium wearing black gloves with our hand up, fist up. They were drawing attention to the injustices that the blacks were suffering in the United States at the time. Mm-hmm. That, to some degree, that protest, if you want to call it that, worked. It brought attention to the issue. It cost them because they were banned from the Olympics, and Tommy Smith would have probably won the 200 meter and later on, and would have ran on the winning 400 meter relay that would have won. So it cost them in that respect for doing what they did. The football player, what was his name again? He's from Turlock. I can't think of his name. Kaepernick. He's originally from Turlock. I saw him play here at Fresno State when he was in college. He didn't play for Fresno State against us. It cost him. Nobody would hire him as a quarterback after that. Could he have protested and done something different to bring attention to injustices? Yeah, probably a couple of dozen things he could have done. But saying that he was treated unjustly for what he did, I have a problem with that. The rules of the employment, the policies of the employer, it is not uncommon for people to lose their job because the policies of the employer were not followed. The employee was disrespectful to the organization, to the employer. That happens every day. And in Kaepernick's case, nobody wanted to hire him because of his attitude. The need to bring the situation to people's attention is valid. The way he went about it, I can't agree with.
During a country music festival in 2017 in Las Vegas, a 64-year-old man opened fire from the 32nd floor of a hotel, targeting the crowd below. 58 were killed and more than 500 were wounded. This is the deadliest mass shooting in recent American history.
I knew that it happened. Fortunately, it wasn't there. Some people from Fresno that were there, I don't know any of them, but it's another one of those things where there's no real explanation for why somebody did that or would do that, other than that they're crazy. I mean, there's something wrong with the person. There was nobody in that crowd that he was trying to, a particular person. It wasn't a personal situation.
I had brought up the coronavirus, which started in 2019 and 2020, but there wasn't really much to say because we were just coming out of it when we had originally recorded this.
Maybe I'm just gullible or naive. I didn't have any problem wearing a mask. I didn't have any problem getting the shots. There were some in my family that the masks are certainly uncomfortable. I didn't have any problem with that. I don't have any problem with getting vaccinations.
The killing of George Floyd, a 46-year-old black man, was on May 25th, 2020. This was by a police officer pressing on his neck with the officer's knee for over 9 minutes during an arrest. This sparked massive riots and protests across the U.S. and around the world under the Black Lives Matter movement.
Sad. Do I feel that his death could have been avoided? Should have been avoided? Yes. There's no justification that I can see for his treatment. The punishment for the police officers is appropriate as far as I'm concerned. It's unfortunate that the attention to racial bias had to be brought forth because of his death, but it's indicative of man. We have our biases, we have our hates, we have our dislikes, we have our misunderstandings, and we cannot justify a lot of that. Man has always been that way and will always be that way until the Lord comes. That's who we are. Doesn't make it right. And if we would recognize and admit to ourselves who we really are, it would make it a much better place to live.
In 2021, the capital of the United States was invaded by violent Trump supporters, which attempted to overturn the results of the presidential election. The attack occurred as Congress was certifying Joe Biden's victory.
Yeah, sad day. And in my opinion, for whatever that's worth, there's one person that is responsible for that, and that's Donald Trump. And you can sugarcoat it as much as you want. He's directly and indirectly responsible. He's a disgrace.
Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022. This marked a major escalation of the conflict that began in 2014.
The war in Ukraine is probably more personal to me than it is maybe to a neighbor, because I've known people from the Ukraine. I had people that were Ukrainian in my home. Years ago, they were from Russia, but there was a boy who was your dad's age, so he was 14 or 15 at the time, helped work in the yard, helped Nathan and I spread some bark around the house in Madeira. That I can't remember his first name now, but his dad was, and his sister, can't remember her name either, was a friend of Connie's, gotten to know her through Young Life. Her father, those kids were, I think there were 7 or 8 children. Her father was from Ukraine and was studying at the seminary at Fresno Pacific. They were Mennonites. There was a sister that worked at Clovis Community Bank or Central Valley Community Bank. Mm-hmm. Her name was Morgan. So I knew three of those kids. Connie knew the mother. I think it probably had, well, we knew about the father, and he was studying at the seminary with hope to go back to Ukraine to be a minister, to be a pastor. So all that to say, because of that personal relationship with that family, mm-hmm. coming from Ukraine, and all the kids were born in Ukraine, mm-hmm. the war in Ukraine becomes a little more personal to me mm-hmm. than it may be to someone who has never been to Ukraine, has never met anybody, who doesn't know anybody sure. from the Ukraine.
In 2022, the James Webb Telescope was launched into space, delivering some incredible photos that scattered across the internet.
Can't fathom any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I'm not smart enough to contribute to any of that. I'm not smart enough to understand it. Mm-hmm. I certainly appreciate what it's doing. I marvel at what it's revealing and what it's telling us in an indirect way about our God. But I guess one of the things that in time, 10 years from now, we will know more than what we know today, mm-hmm. and we still won't know enough.
Yeah,
it's I think it's a marvelous thing, mm-hmm. From every aspect.
There were two final questions I had to ask my grandpa before ending this series. The first is this: what do you think could or will happen in the near future?
I don't have any solid thoughts about what will happen or might happen. I don't, with some reservations, I don't think much about at my age. Even though I've got some longevity in my family, it's possible I'll be here 10 years from now, but the odds are I will not be. And I don't mean to be morbid about it, but mm-hmm. that's just the way it is. Today, I think I'll make 85. Mm-hmm. Do I think I'll make 90? I don't know. And part of me doesn't care. Is life going to be much different at 85? At 90 than it is at 85? Yeah, from some respects, probably. I may have some great-grandchildren by then, but I might have great-grandchildren by the time I'm 85, too. Mm-hmm. My health would not be as good at 90 as it would be at 85. That I'm sure of. Mm-hmm. My interests probably wouldn't be much different than it is today. My interests will probably be pretty much the same tomorrow as they will be at 85 and maybe at 90. I don't think much about the future other than, I know where I'm going to be when I'm gone. That part of the future, there is no doubt in my mind. I'm going to be on the other side of the river, the other side of the Jordan.
And the second question, if you could sum it all up into one thing, what piece of advice would you give from your 8 decades?
Don't do anything stupid. And that's kind of a tongue-in-the-cheek comment. And a lot of times we don't know we've done something stupid until after we've done it, like getting on a ladder. It says right on the ladder. It's on the ladder side, on the ladder itself, how to use the ladder. Well, it was a ladder that you would lean against something. Mm-hmm. It wasn't an A-shaped ladder.
Right.
But it also says, because it has feet on it, mm-hmm. and the feet will swivel, and so that you can lean it one direction or the other. Well, the feet should be flat mm-hmm. on the tread. The tread on the feet should be flat. They'll swing up so that they're inside. The tread will keep it from sliding. If they won't swing up like this, but they'll swing up to the point where the tread is not flat. It's only a portion of the feet. It'd be like sitting on your heels, not on the flat of your feet. And that's what I did. I didn't read the instructions. Didn't need to read the instructions. I knew better mm-hmm. from being on ladders all my life. it slid out from underneath. My stupidity. I have nobody to blame but myself. And the biggest irony of that is that I had fallen off of a 2-step ladder trimming trees 2 months earlier. I'm a slow learner sometimes. So I have no one to blame but myself for being stupid.
After he joked about his advice of don't be stupid, he shared his actual answer.
Be willing to be vulnerable. If you're willing to be vulnerable, and I don't mean to be stupidly vulnerable, but to be willing to be vulnerable says, I don't know everything. I'm still learning. It evokes compassion. It evokes a humility, and it evokes the ability to have a different perspective, whether it's to things or people than you would otherwise have. If you're not vulnerable, you will never grow, you'll never learn, you'll never understand. The lack of vulnerability is stupidity.
Thank you so much for following along with the 8 Decades podcast. I really hope that you enjoyed listening to this project as much as I did creating it. If you did and you'd like to see any future projects of mine, I've put a link down in the episode show notes, which will direct you to my future projects. I'd love for you to check that out. The history in this podcast series was fact-checked by Jeffrey Copeland, sound design by Bihoy Ahmed, video backgrounds by Nathaniel Agueros, and the episodes were directed and edited by me, Josiah Freeland. A special thank you to my grandpa, Steve Freeland, for letting me share his stories and perspectives. This production was made possible in part by the Community Media Access Collaborative.